That's off. That's off. That's off. That's on. Alright, I think we're good to go. Hello! Shadowcat back with more Pokemon. It's a bit of a rough morning, but we're going to try this anyway. It's after the holidays here in the US, and so naturally we have all managed to travel the country, visit all friends, family, and cross-contaminate with every known virus and pathogen that we know of. And so naturally I, like so many other people, are sick. I think. I don't know. Something mild, but mildly annoying and still makes it kind of hard to talk sometimes. So we're going to do the best we can today. Don't know if I'll make it the full 2 hours, but I've got a bowl of soup that I'll be nursing this entire stream. And we're going to do the best we can. So, wish me luck. I'm gonna need it this time around. Alright, so before we get into this, obviously we have to go through all the plugs. If you're new here and you haven't subscribed yet, do that. Don't know why you're here and haven't subscribed yet, but yes, do that. Hit the subscribe button. It's one click. However, if you're willing to add just 2 more clicks, you can hit the bell icon, and that way you get notified every time one of my videos comes out. It's useful. Otherwise, though, if you know somebody else who's also into Pokemon, you think they might enjoy this, share it with them. If you like what I'm doing here, leave a like in the video. You can leave a comment down below. That's what the comments are there for. Or, if you want to put in just a bit more, we have a Discord. Okay? And right now it's an open Discord. You can join it. You should join it. Because there's lots of us there. And not only do we share memes and things, and who doesn't love memes, if you want to play with us, you got to join the Discord. So if you want to be a Pokemon Master too, join the Discord, go to the Behind the Screens channel, let me know the game you want to play, like in this case, Pokemon, what your availability is, and as soon as I have enough people for a game, we'll play a game. So, do that. I hope to see you there, and otherwise, we're just going to get into this. So, first things first, I have people here already. Hello, Alden. Good to see you here. I'm sure that I'm going to need your help today because today's going to be a bit of an interesting one. Fortunately, I still have the link that you sent last time. And so we're going to go straight to that. Blizz is here. Hello, Blizz. Good to see you as well. Need to pop up my chat here so I can read that easier. There we go. That's much better. Alright. And speaking of things that I'm going to need, I'm going to need to get my browser. And I'm going to need to get my spreadsheet, which we've got a brand new spreadsheet. We can go over what we did last week real quick, though. Because it turns out the whole breeding thing, while it was a lot to figure out, the system that we have is actually not that hard. So we'll go over that real quick. For breeding, we don't need to carry over everything for a brand new character. Okay? We established that when we did this. A lot of this is actually going to be done on my side. It's not something that you as the player are going to see because that's just the way the Pokemon games work. You don't get to pick the things. So when we're doing this, we are going to be adding a little bit more randomness into it because we're going to be randomizing the Pokemon as well. When you breed 2 Pokemon, it will be random between the 2 Pokemon that you bred. So if you want to make sure that you get the same Pokemon, make sure you're breeding the same Pokemon. The sex, of course, will be determined randomly. It's either going to be male or female. It's very binary. Otherwise, the IVs. So the IVs are going to come down to this, right here. Over time, as you're leveling up your Pokemon, you are going to be putting points into their EVs, which we can see down here. I mean, this is for Squirtle, and there's only like 1 EV because it was just, hatched. Point is, all the EVs are going to be over here, and we're going to divide these by 10, which means that depending on how you raised your Pokemon, if you raised them with even stats, then you're only going to have 16 or 17 points in each stat, which will reduce down to a +1 in each stat. If you were to raise them with all of your points into 1, it would technically be a +10 in that stat. And it's still a coin toss as to whether they actually inherit that or not, meaning that you could breed some primo Pokemon, but it could take you a very, very long time to do it. And since tabletop stuff always moves slower than the games do, when I say slower, I mean a lot slower. So, we're going to take your EVs, divide them by 10. Those are going to become our IVs. And then your IVs will be inherited by whatever Pokemon that you're breeding, based on whichever parent. So, like we did over here, we took 2 breeding Pokemon. We've got a Golduck in this column. We've got a Blastoise in this column. Since they're both from the water group, we can breed them together. And when we reduced their EVs to IVs, we were able to create the IVs for a Squirtle. And that's what it gets to start off with at level 1, which is what we have down here. And it's not a huge difference, but it is a difference, and it will be a difference over time. So, the abilities, it's going to be 1 ability selected at random from the parent, and then 1 ability selected randomly from both of the parents for the egg to inherit. If one of them happens to be shiny, it's going to be a D100, which I've been told is exceedingly generous. Either way, you're not going to be breeding, tons of Pokemon, probably, so I wouldn't count on that too much. Also, inherited moves. So, this was something I was actually unaware of until we actually did it. But Pokemon can inherit moves, in this case, just to simplify things, because so many things have to be simplified. If both parents have the same move equipped at the time of the breeding, the offspring will be born with that move. So, if you're trying to hatch a Charmander with Flamethrower, make sure that both of your Pokemon, whatever they are, know Flamethrower at the time. If they do, it's pretty much it's a guarantee your offspring will be born with Flamethrower. So that's good. And JP is in. Hello, JP. Good to see you. Apparently, the YouTube studio is taking some extra time to actually update. It does, but there's going to be a better way to do this, because this OBS or YouTube studio chat to OBS back to YouTube is not working out well. Got to figure something else out. Anyway, so that's that. That's the breeding part, and I think it works really well. It's very, very clean. And that's what we were going for. So, with that being done, we are going to move into evolution. And, starting off with evolution, there is one thing that we have to cover before we go into anything else. And yes, I do think it technically falls under the category of evolution. And that is eggs. So, normally when you have an egg, you put it into your party and you walk. And I'm wondering if that amount of walking is the same for every egg. So, we're going to look into this. There's eggs, blah, blah, blah. JP says, had the first snowstorm yesterday, ended up with 6 to 8 inches. Got to pull the snowblower out. Yeah, I heard people saying that that there was a big storm coming across the U.S. Honestly, I look outside this morning. Hold on, let me take another pic. Okay, yeah, it's awful outside. However, there's not exactly snow. There's like a dusting, but it's gray and wet and cold and just absolutely miserable. So, yeah, it's not great. Oh, good. My soup I can drink now. It's not boiling hot anymore. That's nice. Let's see. Alden says no, it doesn't change. Fair enough. So, yeah, here we go. Walking. The amount of time left until a Pokemon hatches from its egg is determined by the number of egg cycles, which are measured in steps that the player walks when the party, including movement on a bicycle or while surfing. In-game time has no direct bearing on egg hatching. Eggs utilize the same memory allocation as Pokemon, so the coding structure is very similar. What would be the friendship value in the egg cycle? Or is the egg cycle count for an egg? Unlike friendship, the value counts down at the end of every egg cycle. So it looks like there is a reducing number as you walk, with a greater probability of hatching as you go. Which is good, because that's actually exactly what I was going to do. So I try not to do any work on these between streams. However, the thought that I had rolling around in my head was initially every day rolling a die to see if it hatches. Now, what would this die be? Well, it's very simple. It would be... This is not where I want to go. I need my spreadsheet. Here we go. Very simply, it would be a 1d20. Okay? 1d20. That's a 5% chance. Okay? So, it's a 1d20 on a... I mean, let's just say that on a 1, it hatches. Okay? See. Blizz is saying... I'm not sure about the amount of steps, but I think dragons are more. I don't know, and Alden seems to be skeptical too. Alden says a list of Pokemon by breeding attributes, though. Is that something I should look at? Let's see. List of Pokemon by breeding attributes. Here we go. Taking a look. Okay, Alden says, this page will show the number of steps or cycles needed to hatch an egg. And Bulbasaur is 2560. So is an Ivysaur. How do you hatch an Ivysaur? No, seriously, how do you hatch an Ivysaur? They just copy it here for memes? Doesn't make sense. 2560, 2560. Oh, hold on a second. Some of these actually do change. The bugs are 1920, which I guess makes sense. They grow faster and they evolve faster. So maybe they hatch faster too. 2560, 2560. Okay. So there is some variation, but let me get back to what I was saying. Let me get back. Let me get back to this. So what I was saying is 1d20, okay? Very basic roll. We use a d20 for pretty much everything anyway. But we're using Roll20, which means I have access to virtual dice. Which means that every day I can roll the dice, and if it lands on a 1, there you go. So 1d20. And then the next day, 1d19. Okay? Now, 1d19 is not a huge difference. However, it's going to be an ever so slight difference. If I pull up my calculator here, obviously, if I do 100 divided by 20, that's 5. Again, 5%. If I do 100 divided by 19, that is 5.26%. So it's an additional quarter. It's not a huge difference, but it is a slightly greater chance that your Pokemon hatches. And so we can keep doing this. We can go 1d18, 1d17, 1d16, so on and so forth, until we get to that 1. And eventually, I mean, in theory, if you were the most unlucky SOB of all time, we would get down to a 1d1. Wherefore, there is literally nothing else that can be rolled, and after 20 days, your Pokemon hatches. Period. It's either that, or I have to figure it out by egg group. And that is possible. Because if I look at these groups, I mean, it is pretty well established that this is what changes them. The monster group, at least these 3, are all 2560. The Nidos, they're all 2560. Oh, and let's see. Alden says you can get or you can hatch the other Pokemon by illegal hacking. Well, we're not hacking anything. Blizz says it goes back to the base Pokemon. That makes sense, actually. Okay, that makes sense. Alden says in the code and possible, just illegally. Even legendary Pokemon have hatching times based on this list, but you can't breed legendary Pokemon, so yeah. I could technically do this in groups. Although, it says right here, like, the Nidorina, no egg groups discovered. But then again, I guess the Nidoran is a monster, so that takes care of everything else. Then it either turns into a Nidorina or a Nidorino based on the gender. I mean, I could do that. Do you think it's necessary? If I sort by this, what are our egg groups? Amorphous is 1. Bug is 2. Ditto is its own, so we're not going to count that. Dragon is 3. Fairy is 4. Field is 5. And there's a lot of them. Flying is 6. Grass is 7. Human-like is 8. Mineral is 9. Monster is 10. No egg group is technically 11, but I mean, you can breed these. Water is 12. And there's 3 of those, so that could be 12 or up to 14. Alden says, oh boy, you want to talk about Nidos. Nidorina and Nidoqueen can't breed for some reason. If you want to breed them, you have to use a Nidoran. That's weird. JP says, my eggs are scrambled. I'm making it with steak and onions. Will be done in 5 minutes if you want some. I have soup. Because otherwise I probably will not be able to talk later. In fact, I may not be able to talk later anyway. And it's not even necessarily good soup. It's just hot water with beef bouillon, which is technically kind of soup. I mean, it is. Bouillon is just soup that has been reduced. Okay, you boil everything off, you pack it into cubes, you dehydrate it, and that leaves all the soupy stuff without the soup. So, it's as much soup as anything else, kinda, sorta. Whatever, it's breakfast. Anyway, I could do this, but I'm not going to. I'm going to make this really simple. The eggs are going to be 1d20 hatch on 1. Reduce the die number every day. I should probably put in here by 1. Actually, not die size. Number of die would be the actual quantity. The die size by every day by 1. There. There we go. All right. PC's in. Hello, PC. It's good to see you. Alright, so that'll take our eggs. Every day I will roll that secretly, and then I can roll the dice, see, you know, what time of day it happens to hatch. And that way, I mean, your egg might hatch in the middle of the night, it might hatch in the middle of the day. You'll never know what day it's going to be, but you will have a guarantee that it will hatch at some point in the next 20 days. And that variation should actually take care of everything else. Because, like we saw in the egg groups, different Pokemon will take different times to hatch out of different eggs. And then, I guess there's friendship values that can affect things, and probably held items as well. Oh, actually, is there a held item that makes eggs hatch faster? Okay, I need my experts on that one. Is there a held item that makes eggs hatch faster? If there is, I may need to account for that. Otherwise, though, I think this is going to work out well. And Alden says, no, there is not. Well, if that's the case, then my system can stand on its own. But there is an ability. Flame Body. Okay. What do it do? Scrolling. Come on, get me up. Flame Body. Okie dokie. Flame Body. When a Pokemon with this ability is hit by a move that makes contact, there is a 1/3 chance that the attacking Pokemon will become burned. I know about that one. JP says, are these assumed just natural hatches, or is there an incubator? So, the way it works in Pokemon is if you either pick up, find an egg, or you breed 2 Pokemon, in order to hatch it, you put it into your party, okay? So it is technically like on your belt or in your coat or whatever. It is on you in some way as you are taking the Pokemon out with you. And so you can flavor it however you want to. The point is that it is there, and that's why I believe things like Flame Body are going to affect it. So every single one of them is going to be natural in that sense. Now, as for like, you know, are they put in an incubator? Well, what do you call your coat? Like, if you had a coat and you stuck the egg inside your coat and zipped it up and just left it there, that's also basically an incubator. So it's hard to say. And even then, an incubator does not make an egg hatch faster. An incubator just makes sure the conditions stay right. So when you say natural or an incubator, they're still kind of the same thing. More or less. But here we go. If a Pokemon with this ability is hit by a multi-strike move, it makes contact, such as Fury Swipes. Each hit has an independent chance to activate this ability. Gen 4 onward, the burn chance is lowered to 30%. Aha, outside of battle. From Pokemon Emerald onward, a Pokemon with Flame Body is in the party, even if fainted. The number of cycles it takes for all Pokemon eggs in the party to hatch are halved. Okay, this effect is not stacked with itself, Magma Armor, or Steam Engine. However, it can be stacked with the hatching power, Pass Power, O Power, or Roto Hatch. Alright, fair enough. So, it's going to have it, and that's useful. Alright, so, that is actually very useful. Which means that, I need to put this in here. So, Flame Body. Have the size of the die rounded up. Now, we don't usually round up, however, if it's a D20, we reduce it by half, then that's a D10, which is easy. Super simple. Love it. Then, if it's a D19, reduce that by half, and that's only 9.5. If we were to round down, that would make it, well, no, actually, that would work. D19, 9.5, round it down. That'd make it a D9. D18. Well, no. Actually, you know what? I'm going to rewrite this. If a Pokemon has Flame Body, start with 1d10. There we go. And if somebody decides to get rid of it later on, then I don't know. Let's see. Alden says that Magmar Armor and Steam Engine do the same thing as well. That's why it explicitly says it doesn't stack. Alright, that's fair. So, Flame Body, Magmar Armor, and Steam Engine. I'll put that right there in between all of them so they all do the same thing. And since the way that I wrote it says it just starts with a D10, obviously, even if you did stack them, they're all going to cumulatively start with a D10. Alright, so that takes care of hatching. Now we can get into the actual meat and potatoes of this. because this is where it's going to get ugly. Okay, so evolution. Now that we've hatched our Pokemon, we need to train it and we need to evolve it. And there's a lot that we need to go through. Not as much that we have to do, I don't think. Alden says, what if you just reduce the die by 2 for every day that it starts with Flame Body Pokemon in the team? Oh, and you continue to account for changing teams. I mean, that would work too. That's not a bad suggestion. It would be, or it would make it more adaptable to if you change your team out. And it would achieve the same thing. Instead of, if you have somebody with Flame Body, you go down by 1. I just need to add in something that they do not stack still. But that's not hard. That's not hard at all. Alright, we'll do that. It's a good idea. So, we'll get rid of this. And let's see, if we have this, reduce the size, or reduce the die size every day by 2 if one of these is in or is active. Active is a good way to put that. That's a good plan. And since I emphasized 1, that should prevent the stacking. Alright, now we can get into the actual evolutions. Because this is where things are going to get a bit crazy. So, when it comes to evolution, there are, by and large, most Pokemon are going to just evolve when they level up, okay? The Pokemon that we're worried about today are absolutely not the majority. In fact, they're even barely the minority, okay? They are the fringe. There are over 1,000 Pokemon and like 900 of them are going to level up and evolve. And sometimes they might need a specific region or something like that, but it's still the same. So we're going to read through these. We're going to make notes primarily as to what we do. Instead of like writing out explicit rules, we're going to be making notes. So, it says here, in the core series of the games, Pokemon only evolve after 1 of 3 events: gaining a level, being exposed to an item, like an evolution stone, or being traded. Now, that last one we're going to have to get into, but we'll get there later. Prior to Gen 8, the above only triggers to evolve a Pokemon. However, in Sword and Shield, it introduced 4 new triggers, each used by a very select few Pokemon species. Spinning and striking a pose with the Pokemon of the party, the Pokemon performing a specific action in battle, traveling through a specific location with the Pokemon in the party, or observing a specific object in a specific location with the Pokemon in the party. These are all things that we're going to have to do. We're going to have to fix those in some way. So when the appropriate trigger occurs, the Pokemon meets the requirements to evolve, it will do so. However, if it meets the trigger in battle, it will only evolve after the battle ends. And, let's see. PC says, wonder if Ben's shadow banned again. I don't know. Wait, hold on. Oh, no, you're not shadow banned. I just missed it. If your mag cargo hatches in the middle of the night while holding it in your sleeping bag, do you just die? I hope not. Hold on, I think I remember this one. Mag cargo. Okay, well, it couldn't hatch into a mag cargo because mag cargo evolves from slugma. That being said, however, slugma evolves into mag cargo at level 38. It's still made of lava. So its body is bright red, fading to a duller red along its extremities, large yellow round eyes. The circulatory system is entirely magma, which delivers vital nutrients and oxygen to orchids. To prevent the body from cooling and hardening, it neither sleeps nor ever stops moving. If its body does begin to cool, it will become brittle and may break apart. Slugma constantly seeks warm places and gathers with other members of the species in mountains. I mean, if I wanted to be extremely generous, at no point in this does it say that it's actually, like, searing hot. I mean, the implication is absolutely there. But rules as written, it doesn't say it. I mean, the only other thing I can think of is that as soon as it hatches, it would have to be put into a Pokeball. Which, I mean, every Pokemon that is hatched goes into a Pokeball anyway, so that kind of tracks. But otherwise, I guess we just have to say that it doesn't light everything on fire as soon as it's hatched. Which is about the only way that I can do that. We will have to make some excuses for some of these Pokemon. Okay, anyway, back to the evolutions. So, the Everstone prevents a Pokemon's evolution. Nothing we have to do with that. If your Pokemon is holding an Everstone, it will just not evolve. There's nothing for us to do there. We can ignore pretty much everything at that point. Okay, so, leveling up. Leveling up is the most common trigger for evolution. Evolution by level up can be triggered by game experience in battle, by using rare candies, evolving up in a daycare center. They evolve in daycare? Huh, didn't know that. Or I'll, evil up will not trigger evolution. Although the Pokemon leveled up in these ways can still evolve if leveled up in battle or rare candy afterwards. The rest of this is stuff that we already know. So, level-based evolution at or above a certain level. So, this is a Chikorita, but all of your starters evolve at level 16. This one is when friendship is high, which we haven't covered friendship yet. But that'll be pretty obvious. I mean, once we figure out the whole friendship system, once your friendship is high enough and they evolve, it'll work. It'll go. When they know a certain move. So, they're using a Piloswine here. Apparently, if it levels up while knowing ancient power, it becomes a Mamoswine. I think that was the same thing with Primeape? Because it had to know Rage Fist. Or maybe it got Rage Fist afterwards. I don't remember. Either way, it was the same thing. Alden says, in older games, leaving a Pokemon at the daycare passively levels them. That was removed in later games. Fair. Scarlet and Violet straight up removed daycares. That's fair, but then again, it has a completely different way to breed your Pokemon. You have picnics. So, I get it. And yeah, I was right. It was Primeape. Yeah, well, it was your Pokemon. That was Aldina. And Aldina saved my tail so many times. Let's see, in certain locations. Now, this is actually going to be a bit of a problem for us. See, when we play, we could, okay, and I've said this before, we could absolutely play in the same locations as the game. The nice thing about the way that I run my games is that I can take a map, and since the maps are already done in a grid, this is super easy. I can take a map, put it onto a grid, and we can use that to play on. Which means that if if there was a Pokemon that needed to be at a very, very specific location to evolve, we could do that. The problem comes in, however, what if we are not in that location? So the example that they gave here is this nose pass. And this has to be leveled up in a special magnetic field. And it turns into a Probopass. Now, a special magnetic field is rather... It's ambiguous. I can simply drop a special magnetic field onto any map. That's not a problem. Blizz says, only 2 Pokemon come to mind for the Icy Stone for Glaceon and Mossy Stone for Leafeon. There's a lot of Pokemon that evolve with stones. There's so many of them. Alden says there's a couple more nose passes you can see. Actually, there's a main article here, location-based evolution. So, Magnemite... Previous evolution, location is now in a magnetic field. Eevee, location base is near a moss rock. And I believe, if I recall correctly, that I actually found a moss rock in Pearl. Didn't know what to do with it at the time. But, I mean, apparently there you go. So, near an ice rock? Right. That's what Blizz was saying. So we're not talking about the items. We're talking about actual locations. Oh, which I think is what Alden might have corrected me on. Yeah, they're not evolution stones. They are physical landmarks. Right. The Gruben Special Magnetic Field. Ah, here we go. Crabrawler. So Crabrawler only levels up at Mount Lanakila. That's going to be a very big problem if we don't have a Mount Lanakila. And so we are going to need to find out some way to fix that. Now, this may not be a hard rule. I mean, this may not be a hard rule here. We may simply say that, you know, instead of at Mount Lanakila, I just have to put something similar into the game. Alda says that Leafeon can now be evolved with a Leaf Stone. Glaceon can now be evolved by an Ice Stone. That was always the case, though, wasn't it? Or was that not always the case? Was it originally that you had to go to a location? Which came first, the location or the stone? Because now I'm confused. I thought it was always done by a stone first. Alden says they also realized how impractical these location-based evolutions are. I mean, they are not exactly hard. I mean, once you have the ability to fly, you can go. You can just fly across the entire world if you wanted to. Let's see. This Yamask, you have to go through a stone arch found at the Dusty Bowl after taking at least 49 HP and damage from attacks without fainting. This is what I'm talking about. Okay? This is what I'm talking about. Some of these are absolutely esoteric. Okay? Esoteric bordering on downright goddamn arcane. And I know this isn't even the worst one, but this is what we're here for. So, list of other methods for evolution. Magnemite at level 30 turns into Magneton, then with a Thunderstorm turns into Magma Zone. Eevee, Leaf Stone turns to Leafeon, Ice Stone turns to Glaceon, that's what we were just talking about. Nose Pass using a Thunderstone, or Charge-a-Bug using a Thunderstone. So, a lot of these... already seem to have alternates set up. The Crabrawler here just uses an Ice Stone, so we can bypass this entire Mount Lanakila thing and ignore it. The only one I see that has it, or there's a problem with, is this Yamask, because it does not have an alternate evolution down here. Let me take a look at that one specifically. Evolution. So, Yamask evolves into Kaffa Gregus, and the Galarian one evolves into Runegus? I have no idea. But that just says what it evolves into. The actual evolution method is not detailed. Side game data, evolution data, sprites. Refer to game data, evolution data for more details. Okay, so right here. It says it evolves to Kaffa Gregus starting at level 34. So that is just a straight level up. The Galarian one evolves into whatever. I don't care. I'm not even trying anymore. If the player travels into a large rock arch in Dusty Bowl after it takes at least 49 damage without fainting. Healing does not reset the counter. The damage can be taken across multiple battles. Taking damage from certain sources, such as self-inflicted curse damage or weather effects, does not contribute. But here's the thing that I notice immediately, okay? This is what I notice immediately. There are two versions of this. There's the normal version, and there's the Galarian version. And the normal version just evolves at level 34. I don't see why we can't just use that for the Galarian version too. Somebody thought they were going to be cute and give this thing an overly complicated evolution for some reason. I mean, okay, Blizz, Alden, I gotta fall back to you on this one. Is this Runerigus particularly special? Is it overpowered? Is it like a pseudo-legendary? Or a legendary? I don't know. Oh, never mind. You're leaving. That's inconvenient for me, but okay. Thank you for coming out, Blizz. It was good to see you. And until next time, take care. Blizz says never used them, so don't know. I don't know either. I don't think there's anything terribly special about it. And Alden says, no, it's just a common Pokemon. So this is, here's what I think I'm going to do. For like this one specifically, we already have a baseline, level 34. We can use that. We can just completely delete all of this and just use the level 34 to level up, okay? And that'll be a case of, you know, if we come across it, if somebody gets it, we'll deal with it on that basis, which is why I said I am not writing out rules for every single evolution, okay? We're just going to be making notes. Let's see, Alden says, if we wanted to add a stone evolution, Duskstone. That's true. That would be good. That would be a good one too. However, since it already has a regular form and a regular evolution, I think we should go with that one. It helps keep things consistent. The less we have to modify, the closer we can keep it to the actual game. All right, so location-based evolutions, don't need them. Not important. Evolving in a region. So, if Coughing evolves in the Galar region, it becomes It becomes that. Which is just... Who thought this was a good idea? So like, here's the interesting thing about this. There's nothing that I really need to do with this, since it very, very specifically says that they evolve this way in a certain region. All I have to do is abide by that. So, for example, if we wanted to play in Galar, Galar is a region. And so we can just... We can just play in that region. We do that, and if your Coughing evolves there, we use that version. JP says top hats. Alden says it's actually quite well received. That's fair. Also says Galar is based in the UK, so British references galore. That explains the top hats. That's actually better than what I was thinking, because what is that? What is that one reference? I don't remember. It's from a cartoon that I did not watch. It was right. Doug Dimmadome, who wears a really tall cowboy hat. What is this even from? Recurring character from the Nickelodeon show The Fairly Odd Parents. Okay. So he was always pictured with a ridiculously tall hat, and that was the first thing that it made me think of. Alden says it also looks like chimney pipes found in many roofs in England. Yes, it does. Although I was actually thinking more like the chimney stacks in industrial centers, which is why when you told me UK, the UK was kind of the heart of the Industrial Revolution, so it made sense. And yeah, JP says, imagine only penny farthings and galore. It's kind of funny. Alden says, so it's constantly emitting smog from top of its hat, so it's a double reference. Yeah, I got one of the references. I didn't know it was from the UK, though. That must mean that that was the one where they had the Scottish girl in it. I liked her. Specifically, I liked all the memes around her. Those were fun. Oh, look, a Pokemon trainer's coming. Come on, get your Pokemon out here. I'm gonna kick your ass. Oh no, she's Scottish. Alright, so, if we wanted to play in the Galar region, we could do that, and we could have your Pokemon evolve that way. We could even... We don't necessarily have to use the map. If we, during Session 0, agreed that, whatever we wanted to play, we wanted to play in a Galar-themed region. We can do that too, because we don't necessarily have to reuse the map to reuse the Pokedex. So if we went in there and said, we want to play on our own map, I can make up a map, okay? I'm not a cartographer. I'm not great at making maps, but I can make playable maps. And so if we just say we're going to use the Galar Pokedex, we're going to make this a Galar-adjacent region, then it'll work. And Alden says, it's all fan canon. I'll take fan canon. Fan canon is sometimes better than the actual canon. Sometimes. This is one of the few times, actually, where it's actually better than the regular canon. Because fan canon is not always good. I give you Tumblr. Okay? It's like the worst thing to ever happen to the internet. Alright, so location is going to be fine. And that will be entirely dependent on what we choose when we're making. At certain times. So, some Pokemon evolve when they are leveled up during a certain time of day. JP says fan canon versus fan canon. What kind of fans are we putting in the canon? Like box fans, oscillating fans, or screaming fans? Depending on the fandom, I definitely have preferences. And all shippers go into the canon, okay? All shippers go into the canon, period. Alright, so back to time of day. The time of day is only ever one of several requirements, never the only one. Oh, and JP says the screaming type. Yeah, we can put them in the canon. Due to the lack of a time system in Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green, Pokemon whose evolution depends on time cannot evolve. Fortunately for us, that is not a problem. How many of them are there, though? Eevee. So, Eevee with high friendship during the daytime becomes an Espeon. Eevee with high friendship at nighttime becomes an Umbreon. I guess that's why I always got Espeons. Let's see. Gilgar holding a Razor Fang during the nighttime. Sneasel holding a Razor Claw during the nighttime. Alden says, I was a big shipper back in my teens. So, I'm gonna deviate here for just a moment. Because I used to not have a problem with shipping. Okay? I was fine with it. Who cares? Whatever. Do your thing. Then Tumblr happened. Now, when I was not a Tumblr person. I was not on the site. I didn't even visit the site. Like, I will occasionally visit DeviantArt from time to time. And I mean like maybe a handful of times a year. But I never, ever went on Tumblr. But I knew Tumblr by reputation. And for the longest time, I did not care about the whole shipping thing. My thought was, if people want to do that, that's fine, whatever, let them have fun. And then a show called RWBY came out. Have you heard of it? Okay, RWBY was an animation done by Rooster Teeth Studios. And when it came out, I actually got really excited for it because I thought the premise was very interesting. It was... The premise of RWBY is that we live in a world of monsters. Now, where the monsters come from, we figure out later. But we live in a world of monsters. And because we live in a world of monsters, there are people who need to protect from those monsters. Introduce the Huntsman. Now, the huntsmen are literally people whose sole purpose is to kill monsters. And to that end, there are multiple academies set up to train them up to do just that. Now, there are all kinds of different things that are going on in the series, some of which are expanded upon, some of which are just straight up abandoned. For example, the very first episode shows the bad guy stealing dust. And like 2 seasons later, dust is no longer even a concept. But the point is that these people have special abilities, and they're simply trained up to kill monsters. Now, I love the fact that every single person has a weapon, and every single weapon transforms. Which, me being a Transformers fanboy, yeah, that just it tickled me. It tickled me. So, that was the beginning of the show, and it was absolutely great. As JP says, Season 1 of RWBY was great. After Monty died, the show was never as good. So Monty actually got through, I believe, halfway through Season 3, I think, before he died. He was definitely there for Season 2. I'm like 90% sure. However, RWBY was doomed to fail because, to JP's point, when Monty died and everybody else had to pick up his project, they did not have his confidence. See, Monty had been doing this whole thing for a really long time. He knew what he was doing, he knew what he wanted to doing, and the man just needed more resources. He needed teams to help him animate, he needed, computers that could actually do the work. He needed stuff. But he was already the creative type there. And so, when he died, everybody else had to try and pick up the series and live up to his legacy. They couldn't. And unfortunately, in order to try and cover that gap, they listened to the fans. And the problem is that the fans, well, I'm going to be kind of rude here, but people don't know what they want. People think they know what they want. People don't actually know what they want. And I'm not the first one to say that. I think anybody who deals with people enough learns that lesson. And so when it came to Rooster Teeth and RWBY, they went to Tumblr. Which again is one of the worst places on the entire internet. It is one of the most degenerate, unhinged places to have ever graced a server. And they listened to them. Which meant that all those people that were screaming about shipping got to have their wishes fulfilled. Which is how we ended up with Bumblebee. No, not the Transformer. Bumblebee is the shipping name for Blake and what the hell's her name? Yang. Blake and Yang. Whose colors are black and yellow, respectively, hence the name. However, there is a shipping name for literally every single combination of characters in RWBY. And I know because I have seen the chart. Yes, there is a chart somewhere out there on the internet, and I don't know how to find it, so I'm not going to pull it up. But they did it. They did that thing, and it was bad. And so the people at Rooster Teeth tried to shoehorn in some of these relationships. And it ended up taking away from the primary plot because you had to have these deviations from the plot to deal with the character relationships. I don't have a problem with that necessarily. However, once your deviations begin to take away from the primary plot of your series, we have a problem. It's kind of like when you have people that are talking about how we need to have representation in media. We need to have representation in movies and TV shows and games, stuff like that. People want to have things like gay relationships in media. And I don't have a problem with that. Nobody ever did. Because we've had gay characters going back to antiquity. The thing is that you can do something good and you can do something bad. If you want to have a gay character, or even a gay married family in media, it's actually really easy. Just have them there. You don't need to come out and say that a couple is gay if you have two people who are just living in the same house with their jobs and their kids and everything else. You don't need to call attention to it because it already explains itself. And this is the one barrier that shipping just cannot get past. Because people will cry for shipping and then the shipping has to be shoehorned in there. And never have I had such a problem with this until Has-Been Hotel came out. If you're not familiar with Has-Been Hotel is it was a web series that was developed by Vivziepop and then was eventually picked up by Amazon and A24 Studios. Now, I really like Has-Been Hotel. I think it's very good, and I think that if you haven't seen it and you want to, it is worth your time to go and at least give it a try. Especially if you like musicals, because it is a musical. Season 2 was a little bit worse than Season 1, but they're still trying. However, the thing that broke my opinion on shipping was Has-Been Hotel. Because of the way Vivziepop operates, because of the audience that she gathers around her, she absolutely caters to the Tumblr rights. And as such, she's not necessarily doing what they say, okay? I'm not going to say that she's bending the knee like Rooster Teeth did. However, the very fact that she is surrounded by these people is insufferable. Because if I go looking for any kind of media or information or whatever on Has-Been Hotel, I can be guaranteed that everywhere I look, I will find somebody trying to cross two of the characters. Like a very obvious one would be Angel Dust and Husk. Because Angel Dust and Husk shared one song. One. They did one song together in one episode. Suddenly now, we are deluged by media and posts and everything else about how cute of a couple they are and how Husk wants Angel to have his baby. Which is just beyond wrong. There's even people that are going through and trying to ship different characters together who have absolutely no interest or place being shipped. A great example is Alistair. Alistair is one of the primary characters in Has-Been Hotel, very important, and Alistair is absolutely evil. Okay? And unapologetically so. Alistair will murder people for fun. Okay? Why would you do this? Okay? Does this go back to the whole, oh wait, he's broken but I can fix him mentality? I have to assume so, but it's awful. It's really bad. It's the worst. And so that broke me on the whole shipping thing. When people were saying, yeah, let's take the mass murderers and let's take the mass murderers and just destroy them or ship them. Excuse me. Like, no, we're gonna get rid of this. I'm done with it. I'm done with it. Get rid of all the shippers. And Alden says, I think that Hello Boss is even worse. Actually, I will push back on that one and say that I think that Hello Boss is infinitely better. And let me explain myself. Also, Hello Boss has a lot more than 8 episodes. It has an entire second season. They're working on the third. In Hell of a Boss, we actually have good relationships, which is surprising coming from Vivziepop. In Hell of a Boss, we have Moxie and Millie, and Moxie and Millie are a really, really good example of a healthy relationship, which is fantastic because there is a drought of healthy relationships in media these days. And I could go on that one, but I'm not going to. Stolas and Blitz are a great example of an unhealthy relationship. However, they are an example of an unhealthy relationship where both parties are trying to be better, which I also think is a message that needs to be put out as well, especially these days. These aren't shipping, these are canon relationships, and I think that they do a really, really good job of showing them. And so for that reason alone, I think that Hello Boss is leagues above Has-Been Hotel. Now, are there a lot of people in Hello Boss that try to do the shipping thing too? Yes. But also the cast of characters is a bit smaller, and so I don't think there's quite as much room to do so. And so I think they get away from that one. For now, at least. We're going to have to wait and see what they do in the future going forward, but yeah, I mean, we'll wait and see. But that Has-Been Hotel was what broke me on shipping. And after that I said, you know what? Maybe some people should just not be allowed to speak, okay? Maybe some people should just be silenced. Let's see. Alden says, Alistar is clearly built to cater to a very specific demographic. I disagree, actually. I disagree. Alistar is just Alistar. Alistar is a very specific kind of character. Now, if a very specific demographic is attracted to that, I think that says more about them than anything else. Alden also says, by the way, can you guess who the most popular male romance option in Baldur's Gate 3 is? Yeah, I really can guess. Let me give you a hint. You hate him. No, believe me, I got that. And not only am I sure that he's the most popular one, but he really wants it. And I'm really going to give it to him, too. If he wants that, I will give him that morning wood, okay? I will give it to him. Right through the heart, into a tree, and left for dawn. How's that for morning wood? Alright? As soon as I can find a great big mallet in that game, I'm going to get it. And I'm going to have Karlach and Lae'zel hold his arms. Okay? I'm going to have Karlach and Lae'zel hold his arms on either side of the tree. And I'm going to get Will to hold the stake. And, wait, actually I just have my strongest people holding him. I guess I'll hold the stake and I'll get Will to swing the mallet. I just really cannot emphasize how much I despise Astarion. Anyway, we're gonna have to get back to this. So that's my rant on shipping. If you want to clip that somewhere, you can clip that and post that wherever you want. Alden says, I never use Tumblr, but I have heard the term. Yeah, trust me, you missed out on nothing. Tumblr was mind cancer. Okay, it was soul cancer. If you were on Tumblr, you basically cannot go to heaven. All right? I said it. All right. Anyway, getting back to Pokemon and getting back to evolutions, because we gotta get through all these. Hopefully, here's the thing with the whole timing. I don't see a reason why we need to change anything here. This is easy. there's nothing we have to do here. So a lot of this, because it says that with the timing, it's never alone. Oh, it says, Alden says Alistar feels very coded for flans. Oh, the chat censors certain messages. Yes, the chat will censor messages. YouTube will censor certain messages. That's why every time somebody's just like, wait, did you not see my message? Like, yeah, that's probably because I got shadow banned. YouTube do that. I could probably broadcast to Rumble at some point. I'm not going to try and do both at once, but I could probably go to Rumble. They don't censor anything, which is a blessing and a curse, because some people need to be censored. Anyway, though, since time of day is not the only thing for most of them... Well, no, hold on, here we go. Tyrant is level up during the daytime. I guess it does include the level up, so they just don't evolve during the day. I see nothing here that we need to change. This Rockruff has a whole bunch of other stuff on here. So, Rockruff, it has to have either Keen Eye, Vital Spark, or Steadfast during the daytime. And that will change, or let it evolve into midday form, midnight form, or dusk form. Yeah, there's nothing that we have to do here. We just need to abide by these rules. So this is fine. There's nothing we need to do. While holding an item, that's easy. Just give your Pokemon an item to hold, and when they evolve, they do. If the Pokemon is a certain gender. So this is very, very specific to only a few. The example they have here is Combis. Male Combis do not evolve, only female Combis evolve. Again, there's nothing we have to do there. So, just follow those rules. In a certain game... Okay. So, this is actually going to be a bit tricky. So, right here, Cosmoem. So, if it evolves, I have to assume that this is the legendary for Sun and Moon, because I remember that Solgalo and Lunala were the poster children for Sun and Moon. I'm assuming that means that both games, Sun and Moon, got Cosmoem, instead of getting just this. If it evolves in Sun, Ultra Sun, Sword, or Scarlet, it turns into this one. If it evolves in Moon, Ultra Moon, Shield, or Violet, it turns into this one. We don't have that in the tabletop game. And so... yeah. Alden says, just make it evolve based on the time of day. Solgaleo is the sun, Lunala is the moon. That was my initial thought too. It was either going to be that or make it random, but since it is literally based on sun and moon, making it a day and a night is what makes it the most, or what makes the most sense. However, are there any others? Rockruff, but we already established that one doesn't really change. Cosmog becomes Cosmoem, which then becomes the others. Okay. And that's it. Alright, you know what? That's super simple. So, it's just either day or night. There's nothing else we have to do there. It only really affects one Pokemon. And this is where we're getting into a lot of those really, really niche cases. Like Rellor. So, with Rellor, So, while outside of its Pokeball, walking 1,000 steps using the Let's Go feature. If you do that, then Relor is going to turn into Rabaska. How many more are there? Because I feel like there was 2. Okay, so there are 2 more. Bramblin, Palmo, and Relor both evolve this way. I have an idea. I have an idea. So, given how this works, normally this is one of the more egregious ones because getting 1,000 steps in while the pal is out, or not the pal, the Pokemon is outside is kind of a chore. But we're not counting steps. There is absolutely no time when I would ever be counting steps in a tabletop game. There are 2 ways that I can think of to handle this, and I really, really hate one of them. So let's go ahead and start with the one that I really, really hate. If it wants to count steps, I'm not counting steps, but we can count distance. Now, there are 2 types of distance in the game. There is combat distance and there is non-combat distance, otherwise known as overworld movement. In combat, almost everybody is going to move a set amount of distance per turn. And we've seen this before. We looked at all of our other Pokemon. Yeah, up here. Venusaur is apparently moving at 20 feet per turn. And this Aegislash is moving at 30 feet per turn. Now, what we could do, and again, I hate this. I really do. I hate everything about this, but I'm going to cover it anyway. What we could do is we could say that instead of it being, 1,000 steps, what if it was 1,000 feet? And we could say that, your Pokemon moves 20 feet per turn because of its size. And as such, once it moves 1,000 feet, it's going to evolve, which is fine. Technically, that works. 1,000 feet divided by 20 feet is going to be 50 turns. If you moved 50 times, 50 turns, there you go. However, that would require you to actually keep track of how far has your Pokemon moved. And I'm not going to lie, I hate that on a number of reasons. Number 1, I don't want to keep track of it. Okay? I have too many things to keep track of right now as it is. You have no idea. What you're seeing here is just the module. These are the rules that I need to know to actually run the game. The actual notes for running the game fill a workbook. And I mean seriously fill a workbook. I believe that my workbook for our Star Trek game, which if you want to join it, again, go to the Discord server, go to the Behind the Screen channel, tell me that you want into the Star Trek game or the B team, and we play on Friday nights. If you have that availability, you're welcome to come and play. But the entire workbook for that game is probably burgeoning on 30 at this point. Hold on, I wonder if I can find out. If I go to insert a sheet, I'm on sheet 26 now. Okay, not 30 yet, but I'm on 26 now. Only 3 of those are actual rules. The rest of it is generators, lists, tables, everything else. It's big. So keeping track of how far has your Pokemon walked? Yeah, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. And asking my players to keep track of how far has your Pokemon run is never going to happen, because I can't necessarily get my players to keep track of arrows or ammunition. Asking them to keep track of how far has your Pokemon walked, it's not going to happen. It's going to turn into, wait, how... My Pokemon moved 4 times, I think. Did it? Well, 4 times my move speed, that would be 80 feet, right? I don't remember. I have to keep track of all of your characters, and I have to keep track of 6 NPCs. I don't have time. So while this is probably the best way to go about it, I hate it. And I'm just not going to do it. And JP says, oh no, don't crash it. Don't worry, I'm not going to crash anything. That's your job. You see what I did there? If you didn't get that joke, join us for the B team. Anyway, so if we leave behind the rule set that I don't like, then we get into the one that I do like, and that is to make it very, very simple. Instead of making it or keeping track of how far has your Pokemon walked in combat, what if we cover the amount of distance that it covers out of combat? For example, what if I said that your Pokemon needs to cover 100 miles walking? Okay, well, what does that imply then? Again, we have to get into the differentiation between combat speed and travel speed. So, combat speed, your average person moves 30 feet per round. That is 30 feet in 5 seconds, which is reasonable. Or not 5 seconds, 6 seconds. It's very reasonable. You can move 30 feet per round and usually still take an action. Overland speed is 3 miles per hour. So, when we are looking at that, we can say that, if you travel for 1 day, which is an 8-hour travel before you have to rest, 8 hours at 3 miles per hour is 24 miles. So what if I said that you needed to travel 100 miles before something happens? Well, the first day is going to be 24 miles. The second day will be 48 miles. The third day will be 72 miles. The fourth day will be 96 miles. And if you were to force march just that extra little bit, in 4 days, you could achieve your 100-mile goal. Now, that being said, that is based on normal walking speed. If we're talking about something like a Palmot, which is going to be a small creature, its default move speed would be only 20 feet, or 2 miles per hour. Which means that you would only be covering about 16 miles a day, and eventually, it would take you longer, but you would still cover 100 miles. Now, you would have to travel at the slower speed in order to make sure that your Pokemon got its steps in. Because it's not just about your steps, it's about the Pokemon steps too. By making your Pokemon walk that distance, it is going to, number 1, fulfill the criteria for the evolution. The game says 100 steps, I'm talking 1,000 steps, I'm talking 100 miles. There will be a consequence for it, because your party will likely be slowed down for it. Not a tremendous amount, and it's not the worst thing to happen, but you would have to pay some kind of price for it. And it is super, super easy to keep track of. Every day of travel, just mark down how far did you go. We can completely exclude any combat because what is a few feet to a few miles? So whatever movement that you have in combat, it's really just incidental. So we just track the overworld movement. And once we pass like 100 miles, which I think is fair, your Pokemon evolves. I mean, how do we feel about that? I feel good about that idea. I like that idea. And JP says, so the Karen is a Pokemon. Kinda. Sorta. Yeah. I mean, it can be if you choose it. I like that idea. I think that's the one that I want to go with. So I'm going to come over here to the evolutions. Evolution notes. So the Let's Go feature. So let's go. And Alden says, so 1,000 to evolve, or 100 miles to evolve them. That's my thinking. So if I was to translate it directly, first off, 1,000 steps is not going to be that far. And so, yeah, I don't really know what else to do with that. I wonder if I can separate this tab. Let's see if I'm going to screw everything up here. Can I move this tab to a new window? Apparently not. Alright, hold on just a second. I gotta get my chat back on OBS. Chat window. There we go. Okay. Alda says that 1,000 steps is about a half a mile. Well, that's what I'm going to find out. I'm going to go to the chat GPTs and say, on average, how long is 1,000 steps? And we'll give that just a moment. ChatGPT agrees. The short version is about half a mile. And so half a mile, if we had to keep track of it in terms of the game, that would be absolutely murder to try and keep track of it. At the same time, for overland movement, that's not even a half an hour of overland travel. And so it would then become trivial to the point of basically just being a choice. Because if it was just, I take my Pokemon out and we walk for 1,000 steps, that's not even anything that you have to necessarily role play. It's just, I'm going to do the thing and evolve my Pokemon. So, yeah, that. Then, I was going to check on something else, too. Oh, right, I don't need GPT for that one. If I made it 1,000 miles... If we made it 1,000 miles, divide that by 24, which is the normal overland movement for somebody with a move speed of 30 feet. That would be 41 days. And for normal, or for the shorter movement of a smaller Pokemon, 62 days, which is way too long. That's way too many days to wait for that. So if we go for 100 miles at the at the rate of travel for a smaller Pokemon that only moves 20 feet per round, 6.25 days of overland travel would evolve your Pokemon. And see, Alden says, I think it's a very good representation for this evolution. As ridiculous as it sounds, it's the most accurate way to simulate this evolution. Just go for a 10-minute walk, which is half a day in Scarlet and Violet. Yeah, and so everything is really skewed in the games. Yeah, most people would just take a rubber band and put it on their controller and walk around in circles for a half an hour. I was too lazy to do that. I just used a different Pokemon. So I think that 100 days is the way to go. Or 100 miles. So anything for Let's Go is going to be 100 miles of overland travel at the evolving Pokemon's speed. And that should do it. And like I said, that is 6.25 days. Like, exactly, 6.25. JP can back me up in the chat on this one. 6 days of travel, depending on what happens during that travel, can happen in one session. In some sessions, you don't even make one day, and, that happens. But in others, you can do 6 days easy. Especially if you were to make it a priority. If you wanted to push that 6 days to make sure it happened and ignore everything else, totally doable. And so this could be one of the least egregious ways to interpret this. So using the Let's Go feature, I think we've got that one nailed. Then it just says unique conditions. Okay. So this is where things are going to get ugly. In Pokemon XD Gale of Darkness, I don't even know what Pokemon XD is. I'm going to go ahead and assume this is not one of the main games. I think we can ignore that. Especially since we already have evolutions for Espeon and Umbreon, so I think we're fine. And Alden just says, I'll leave it to your discretion. This is your area of expertise. Your input is welcome here. Alden says XD is a spin-off game. We can skip it. Good, skipping it. Evolves into Sylveon while leveled up, knowing a fairy-type move and having at least 2 levels of affection or high friendship. I think that we already have this kind of covered. High friendship, we haven't done the friendship mechanic yet, but we already understand that we need that. And knowing a fairy-type move. I'm not responsible for what your Pokemon knows. If you want to get a Sylveon, teach it a fairy move. Mantike evolves into Mantine when leveled up with a Remoraid in the player's party. Okay. Again, very specific, but also very on you. It's just going to level up, and you need to make sure you have a Remoraid in your party. Phoebus evolves into Melodic. Well, Melodic is banned from the game, so yeah. Don't have to worry about that one. Okay, fine. I'm not going to ban Melodic from the game. I just really have a grudge, okay? I really have a grudge. When leveled up with its beauty condition at 170 or above, starting from Gen 5, it also evolves when traded holding a prism scale. Okay. Is this the time where I have to talk about trading? I feel like this is the time when I have to talk about trading. So, here's the thing. I don't know what to do with trading. I mean, I'm going to come right out and I'm going to say it. I don't know what to do. Here's the thing. In the game, trading is either the hardest part of the entire game or the most trivial part of the entire game. For example, if you have a friend, okay? If you have a friend and you're both playing Pokemon and you really want to evolve your Pokemon, whatever that might be. Like, I'm pretty sure if I remember correctly, Scyther needs to be traded to become Scizor. So long as you have a friend, you can literally just say, hey, would you take this Pokemon? And your friend will take your Scyther, it will evolve into Scizor, and then they will say, okay, here's your Pokemon back. It is that simple. You gave it to them, and they gave it back to you, and your Pokemon evolved in the process. It is the single most trivial thing there is. At the same time, if you're like me, and absolutely antisocial, having a Pokemon that requires being traded to evolve is the worst thing ever, because you don't have friends to evolve it with, and thus it will never evolve. Let's see, Alden says there is an alternative to trade evolutions. Pokemon Legends Arceus has a special item called the Link Cable. All right, I'm listening. I'm listening. It's functionally an evolution stone. You know, I might take that. I have not used it, or I have not used anything from Legends Arceus, because Legends Arceus is just plain different, but I might use that. Because I don't otherwise know what to do. Otherwise, I mean, picture this, okay? Picture this, because Pokemon is generally played as a solo game. Okay? It wasn't until we got to Scarlet and Violet that you had, like, true multiplayer. So it has always been a single-player game. Which is why the whole trading mechanic was a big deal. It forced you to go out and actually find a person who also plays it, and then you had to have very, very special circumstances to do it. Specifically, that link cable. But if we're playing the game and there's a party of 4 people, and at the end of the day, you're all sitting around the campfire, everything else, you're resting up, you're recovering, you're going through your notes, you're comparing experiences, stuff like that. Trading them is as simple as taking the Pokemon off your belt and handing it to the next person. And then they can immediately hand it back. I think I like the link cable idea better, just because the idea of trading Pokemon just is not going to work for us. Now, I'm not going to say that you can't buy them, or you can't trade Pokemon. I'm not going to say that you can't buy Pokemon even. Like, there's nowhere in Pokemon that you can just buy a Pokemon. However, that being said, I see no reason why people would not make a business out of either catching or breeding Pokemon. I mean, yes, if you, as, you know, a Pokemon trainer, wanted to make your own custom team and everything, you might go out there and catch Pokemon and breed Pokemon and everything else. But let's consider this. Ash's mom. Okay? Yeah, we're going way back on this one. Ash's mom. Now, if I recall correctly, Ash's mom has a Mr. Mime in the house. Ash's mom is not a Pokemon trainer, which means that Ash's mom had to get Mr. Mime from somewhere. I don't know if they ever actually say where it is, but more than likely, Ash's mom was either gifted a Mr. Mime or straight up bought one. And Alden says that you can, I guess, buy or trade in exactly one instance. In the original Red and Blue games, they had an NPC that would sell you a Magikarp for 500 Pokédollars. Does Pokemon have lemon laws? I feel like you'd make a killing in Pokemon as a lawyer. But anyway, I see no reason not to put in a system where you could buy or trade Pokemon. But that would be an actual change in ownership. Alden says she adopted Mr. Mime. It was a wild Pokemon that just happened to be passing by. Okay, I mean, I did not know that. I could only assume. JP says, create a business as a rent-a-friend so people can give you Pokemon to trade hatch. JP, that already exists. You may be joking, but that literally already exists. I mean, just for starters, I know that in terms of Scarlet and Violet, and I know because I played Scarlet and Violet, so I had to look some things up. For Scarlet and Violet, there were entire Discord servers where you could just contact people for trading. Hi, I have this Pokemon, I'm looking for this Pokemon, and you put people together. So, Discord servers literally had matchmaking services to help people trade Pokemon. It's more real than you think. Alden says, oh wait, you can also buy stolen Pokemon from Team Rocket. Red and Blue had a casino, and you can turn in tokens to trade for Pokemon they had as prizes. Well, I mean, I wasn't going to go into Team Rocket, but I totally kind of thought the same thing. Alden says, yeah, I do my trading through Reddit. Exactly. So these services already kind of exist. I have no problem with putting them in there. Now, what does that mean for us? That would mean that essentially you could, and I'm going to go back to my Scyther Scizor example, you could buy a Scizor because the very act of purchasing it, or, trading, because you can't trade for nothing. If you trade for a Pokemon, you have to give them a Pokemon. I'm saying that you could trade for just money. The purpose of, or the practice of just buying a Scyther means that you could never actually buy a Scyther. It would literally be impossible to buy a Scyther, because the moment that you bought the Scyther, it would evolve into a Scizor. Which is not a bad idea, actually, because that would fix our need for trading. Okay, that would fix our need for trading. And it would also require you to know your Pokemon. It would require you to know your Pokemon. Because, hold on, let me see if I can find this. Using an item, Evolution Stone, regions, special items, come on. Trading for a certain Pokemon. I want a list of Pokemon that you trade for. Oh, wait, hold on. Trade evolution. Alden says that this is a bit weird, but trading is done by a machine. I get that. However, the trading by a machine doesn't have to stay that way. The trading by a machine is actually a requirement of the video game, because you have to have, and I'm not going to get too into the weeds on this one, you have to trade via protocols, okay? So, obviously, in order to talk with the system, you need to have some kind of like TCP/IP layering going on, or UDP layering, or whatever it happens to be, in order to communicate between one device and another device. Unless you're going to have a connection open all the time, which you're not going to, but unless you're going to have a connection open all the time, you would need to have some kind of system to actually bring your device online, connect to the internet, and do all of that. And so that's why we have the computer that does it in the games. Now, you say that it also happens in the anime, and that's fine. I agree. But the anime is also mirroring what happens in the game. At least that's going to be my interpretation of it. We used a machine in the game. We're going to use a machine in the anime. And technically speaking, if we were going to do this, we could do this with vendors as well. So the vendor could have their Pokemon computer, just like yours, but this would be their own private computer, hooked up to their own trading machine, and so you would just put your money in, and it would give you a Pokeball in return. I think this is going to work. I think it's going to work really well. Trade evolution. This is also known as evolution by transmission. And so a list of them. This is what I wanted. So take a look at this. So Kadabra, Machoke, Graveler, Haunter, Poliwhirl, Slowpoke, Onix, Scyther. See, I was right. Seadra, Porygon, Clamperl, Rhydon, Electabuzz, Magmar, Porygon 2. Okay. Dusclops, Phoebus, Boldore, Girder, Carablast, Shelmet. That's a weird looking Pokemon. Spritzy, Swirlix, Phanthump, Pumpkaboo, Graveler, again. Well, that's the Galarian? No, it's the Alolan version. Phoebus, again. Oh, this is using the link cable in Arceus. Okay, so we can skip these. Yeah. So, what I'm thinking here is, you could buy a Pokemon. Now, some things would have to be specified. So, for example, if you wanted to buy a Slowpoke, okay? If you wanted to buy a Slowpoke, and you wanted to get a Slowking, if you were to just buy a Slowpoke, then you would get a Slowpoke. Because it says right here, in order to get a Slowking, you need to trade it holding a King's Rock. So what if we considered the following? What if you wanted to get a Slowking? So you find a vendor who has a Slowpoke. Okay, that's fine. You find a vendor with a Slowpoke. You have to bring them the King's Rock. They will sell you a Slowpoke, or if you bring them the King's Rock and say, here, I have this King's Rock, I would like to get a Slowking, please. You could pay for the Pokemon, give them the King's Rock, and then when they sell you the Pokemon, they trade you the Pokemon, you pay them for it, and you get the Slowking in return. That means that some Pokemon you'll be able to just simply buy. Like you can buy an Abra. Okay, you can buy the Abra. But you cannot buy a Kadabra. In which case, you know, if you were to buy the Kadabra, it would just immediately come out in Alakazam. But now here's a big problem that I see. Here's a big problem I see. What if it's your Kadabra? Like, this all works great on paper if we assume that you just wanted to buy an Alakazam. But what if you've already got the Abra? What if you've already gone through the trouble to level it up to level 16 and now you've got a Kadabra? How do you level up your Kadabra and keep your partner? Because again, I look at these things through the lens of, you know, partners. I would not want to get rid of my Kadabra. I wouldn't. Unless we take the sentimentality out of it and just say that, while it is unfortunate, it is very unfortunate that you would lose your partner this way. It is part of the life cycle of your Pokemon. And as such, maybe that's actually kind of the point. Maybe that's the point. Alda says that, yeah, I think that 99% of players wouldn't either, to be honest. Even I wouldn't. But what if that's kind of the point? What if you had taken this Abra and raised it up to be a Kadabra, and you said, you know what? I want to have an Alakazam. What if the entire point there, and like, this could actually be a side quest. Okay, and you can ask JP in the chat. I am not opposed to side quests. What if the entire point of having an evolution like this is that you raised your Abra to a Kadabra, you bend partners, and now the point of the life comes that you have to go find another person to trade that Kadabra with. So they're in the same boat that you are. They raised their Abra to a Kadabra, and they're ready to move on to an Alakazam. And so you find another person who has a Kadabra, and you trade them. And so both of you ends up with a Kadabra that you don't know, but you know has been, you know, given the same kind of love and attention that you gave yours. And so you're continuing on the journey with a new Pokemon, but with different experiences. And I think that that could be a really interesting and even downright beautiful way to go about that. Now, Alden asked the important question, what is stopping me from simply requesting a trade back? And the answer to that is, I have absolutely no idea. I really do not know. I have absolutely no idea what is stopping you from doing that. Because the honest answer is nothing. The answer is nothing. There's nothing stopping you from trading back. This is something that would have to be done narratively, and it would be, by definition, a plot hole. Now, plot holes in general, as a rule in writing, are to be avoided at every possible avenue. However, there are some circumstances where sometimes plot holes are unavoidable. And I mean, I don't know. Let's see. JP says sometimes we create our own unintentional side quests. Yes, you do. Very much so. Alden says, like, what if the other party is amicable to just trading back? Yeah. JPL says there's a 15-minute delay on messages appearing on screen, just FYI. Yes, there are. That is just the way things work online. It's called lag. Specifically, it's called latency. There's always a delay. Alden says, if both parties have such a strong bond with this Kadabra we raised, I find it hard to believe that they wouldn't be open to this idea. And you're right, they would be. And mechanically speaking, I cannot find a reason to say no. Which means that I have to find a not mechanical reason. And when we're talking about a not mechanical reason, we have to talk about sociological things, cultural things, legal things. Like, for example, we could say that there is absolutely no physical reason why you couldn't do this. But we could say that there is a cultural reason to do this. That it would be in bad form to simply trade back. Now, maybe this doesn't stop you. Maybe you still push for it and say, well, I don't want to. Now we could trigger something that could be mechanical. So if there is a social expectation that you simply do not trade your Pokemon back, to try and get the other person to do so might actually require you to do something akin to a diplomacy check. To try and convince them to, hey, we can just trade these back and forth. Now, like, are we talking about plotting a murder here? No, we're not talking about plotting a murder here. This would be along the same category as, like, shoplifting. Trying to convince somebody to this, like, you know, it's a can of soda. Nobody's gonna know, right? All right? I mean, it's just that. Well, except that, you know, technically that would be a crime. This isn't technically a crime. Okay, it's like convincing somebody to walk outside with wearing socks and sandals, okay? It's not illegal, but people are going to judge you. I think that would be probably the best way to do that, because I think it would help to keep the idea of trading important. I think it would give it weight. I think that it would force you to consider your trades more significantly. I also think that it actually, and consider this, and we're pretty much done for the day because, like, we're on past time already. But consider this. If we were to go ahead and assume that there is a social faux pas involving trading back, that would actually lend some weight to a charisma-based character. See, there's a lot of different ways to build characters, and there's a lot of different stats. Strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, charisma. Charisma is one of those stats that doesn't see a whole lot of use and a whole lot of attention because of the use cases. It is not often that you see a charisma-based character unless it's specifically, like, magically attuned. Like a sorcerer is a charisma-based character, but sorcerers do not specialize in diplomacy, intimidation, bluffing, stuff like that. It just happens to be their casting stat. Making a charisma-based Pokemon trader would be a very interesting idea for a character. And so we can do it as a social construct and have a character build specifically made to undermine that social construct. So we'll put a pin in that one. We'll come back to it next time. We'll write down some quick rules for that one because it won't need much. And yeah, I think so. I think that'll work. So, with that being said, I'm going to get out of here. I'm going I'm going to go try a hot shower and see if that helps fix my throat, because my throat is on fire. And I still have a whole bunch of recording to do later this week. So, this was good. I enjoyed this. We didn't have to do a whole lot, but I've learned a whole lot, and that's important. So, if you want to see more of this, like how we handle the trading, make sure to join us, or make sure to subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell icon, that we get notified every time these videos come out. If you know somebody else who's also interested in Pokemon, especially if they're an expert in Pokemon, because I can use more experts, always. Share this video with them. Otherwise, though, if you just like me, like what I'm doing here, leave a like on the video. You can leave a comment down below. You can also join the Discord. Join the Discord. Do it. Do it. Come play with us. Go to the Behind the Screens channel. Let me know what games you want to play, what your availability is. I will get a group together as soon as I can, as soon as I have enough people, and we'll play. So, do that. I hope to see you back here next time as well. And until then, take care.